Welcome back to Henry Harrison's Entrepreneurs, Business, and Finance podcast featuring WebOracle founder Michael Trkolta. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Henry Harrison podcast, Entrepreneurs, Business, and Finance. Today we're fortunate to have Michael Trkolta on the podcast with us, and he is an entrepreneur extraordinaire, I'll call him. 3 businesses right now, and lots of good things to share about AI and marketing and the future, and you name it. But I'm going to let Michael talk about what he's doing. Hello, Michael.
How you doing, Henry? Good to be with you and your audience. Thank you very much for having me.
I don't know where to start, but why don't you just tell us what you're doing right now, how you divide your time, what your businesses do, what your clients are. You seem very positive, like you enjoy them, and, I'm sure not every moment, but yeah.
Yeah, well, businesses, as long as you're enjoying 80% of the time, Henry, you're doing good. It's if you start edging out towards that 40, 60, it starts to become a bit of a concern. But I've been fortunate enough to enjoy it most of my life. It hasn't always been the roses sort of coming up out of the ground and smelling them on a regular basis. But I tell you what, if you can push through those parts and those difficult moments, it certainly builds that armor and strengthens you up along the way. But I'll give you a little bit of a background on me and who I am and where I came from. I came from a sporting background. I played sport for most of my life. And I think that was the foundational component of where I, learned how to become very focused, become very winning orientated. I don't know whether that's allowed. You can say that these days, but, winning was very important, especially if you're being paid for it in professional capacity. And I thought, I'm ending towards the end of my career in tennis and working with other athletes, etc. And I thought I really want to change. And I studied at university as well, architecture and marketing. And I thought, you know what? I don't want to do any marketing. Sorry, I don't want to do any architecture because my dad was in architecture. And I thought, you know what? I'll just jump straight into marketing. And then I kind of got through it, almost finished it, and decided, I think I can do this. And I started up a publishing company. Kicked off with this publishing company, and it was just an idea. I had no business acumen at that point in my life, which was really tough. And I tell you what, that was the school of hard knocks. And you learned pretty quickly that your idea wasn't always as great as you might think it is. A lot of people said no, and you had people that said yes, but the beauty about it was you learned a lot from the ones that said no. So I asked a lot of questions. Questions were important. That really honed my skills and obviously the product. So we built a product in publishing. I own the entire east coast of Australia with a local directory-based advertising component for local businesses only. So in townships, etc., that really don't have a voice and don't have the money to go out and spend, tens of thousands of dollars on advertising. But they could do it in this book. So this one little book called My Yearly Directory literally was a beautifully bound book, presented very well. Not one editorial in it. We had the Yellow Pages study it, using it in their study courses on how to actually fill up a book without any editorials whatsoever and get people to use it. And I had 1.5 million readers at the height of it before I sold it. And the reason I sold it, it was a really difficult decision. It was based around where the internet was going. So the internet was starting to come up. I mean, I had dial-up. You remember the days of dial-up? It just took, 20 minutes to render one image before broadband kind of kicked in. And I started getting requests from people asking, can you do something for us? We want a thing called a website. It's like, okay, I got this. Now it's starting to come together. All these pieces start to come together. And it was mostly the clients that we had. So we had about 3,000 clients along the East Coast. And overnight, we were building one-page websites. It was all coming together. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to take a little bit of leap of faith here and jump into digital. I planned it out very carefully. It was a huge risk because I was watching people fall over left, right, and center trying to get into this space without planning. But I planned it out very carefully. Everyone in the organization thought I was nuts, but I read the writing on the wall, and we had people literally calling up left, right, and center. This was the time, one pages, 30 websites in a month. We're pumping out one a day. moved away from that and got straight into digital, and the rest is history. And this is where I've been for the last 20 plus years now.
I was just looking at the population on my phone of Australia, 28 million people. And you're on the East Coast, which is where most of the population is. Obviously, Australia is huge. I think how does it compare to the US? It's surprisingly
We,
big compared to the US.
yeah. Well, you guys have 300 and what is it, 60 million people? We have, just over 25 now. Back then, it would have been around 20 million people. So to achieve that, I thought I was pretty happy with it. I didn't expect that. I was quite kind of happy just sort of doing my thing in Victoria, but it took off right along the East Coast, which was fantastic. So considerably smaller in population, around the same land mass as the US. Yeah, you can
It's
put that into
incredible. I've been to the East Coast. I haven't been to the center or the West Coast because there's so much traveling just on the East Coast. And I always get a kick out of it, time zones around the US, but weather and I mean, the fact that it's Friday morning there when it's Thursday here, it's one thing to say 6 hours, 8 hours, but somehow when it's the whole next day, it's sort of a neat thing about how big the world is. And of course, down there, you're in winter and we're in Dallas, Texas. So I think it's 100 degrees today, according to my weather. And
Wow.
and
Okay.
99 degrees. And my wife and I went to Wyoming, a famous park, Yellowstone National Park, to see the wildlife and get away, but also to cool off because in the mornings it's in the 50s.
Yeah.
So down there, you were saying what's the weather right now? It doesn't snow too much or ice, does it in Melbourne?
It's 35 at the moment. Not any, I mean, it's considered a warm day today. So we have two extremes. Anything along the East Coast, you can go from 130, 40 degrees right down to, depending on where you are in Australia, right down to, -2 or 3 overnight. So it can get very, very cold over winter. Even in some of the warmer parts, even in the desert, the desert cools down over winter.
Yeah. I didn't recognize the schools because, you probably wouldn't recognize all the schools. I don't even recognize all the schools in America, but I think there's 5,000 some. But you mentioned going to architecture, RMIT University, and
Yeah,
also
RMIT.
and then
Yeah, so
Australian Institute of Management, and decided not architecture, developed a directory, had an exit, sold that, went into websites before anybody knew what they were, and was dominating the East Coast for that. And that's where I interrupted you about the fun of just talking about Australia.
yeah.
If I summarize that right, correct me if I messed that up. But
Yeah, it's really funny that you mentioned RMIT. I studied at RMIT, which is one of the major universities here in Australia. That was my architectural component and marketing, weirdly enough. And then they turned into a client, you know, 25, nearly 30 years later.
wow, that's pretty
So
cool. Something to be
yeah.
proud of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's something to be very proud of. So it's nice to know that the university that you went to became a client down the track, although none of the teachers and the lecturers are there anymore, unfortunately. But it's a nice little badge of honor
Might
to
have been a
have.
good thing. If you got in trouble, they might not have taken you on as a client. I don't know what
Right.
your drinking habits were back then, but
Yeah. Well, I wasn't too bad, but I was okay at school.
I'm sure you were. I'm just trying to make a joke. Um,
Yeah, no, that's
Not
okay.
everybody's proud of every moment they had in college.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So yeah, so that was a great experience. Yeah, and then, the business sort of grew into a company called Network Media. Now we have three mastheads. What I mean by that, we have WebOracle, which is a 360-degree digital agency that specializes in mid-tier to enterprise type businesses. So mid-tier in Australia, even though we work with US companies, but a mid-tier here in Australia is considered 50 to $200 million, and it's usually privately owned. We also work with listed companies, but that's obviously the higher end of the enterprise spectrum. And then we have Amp Brand, which is an FMCG branding type company that looks at anything to do with print. Again, a little bit of print involved for mid to enterprise type of companies right across the board. And then we have a company called Premier Links, which does advertising online. So it coming up with PR snippets that really come together that are carefully thought out and crafted in a way that you can literally drop them into a journalist's hands on a Friday night just before they need to go down to the bar or whatever the case might be, and they need to get something out really quickly. And then you hope that it kind of explodes for your client. So they're the three different companies that we have. But the great thing about them, Henry, is that they all pull different resources from each other. And I've learned to sort of understand that resources are really important and they're hard to come by. And to really build up resources in a company, you've got to have good turnover in that company. Two, you've got to have stable turnover and that recurring revenue model. So I've always focused around a recurring revenue model, and that's been a challenge. That's the huge challenge. I remember one time, through the inaugural stages of WebOracle, building it up and, moving it along. And all of a sudden we landed our biggest client. And I thought, oh, this is great. We've got a client. But that client took up 60% of our revenue and we were really top heavy. And one day that client decided to leave when we had a bunch of people sitting around in the office. And I was like, okay, this doesn't look good at the moment. And we had the accounts people, everyone literally grouped together and say, well, we need to sort of cut costs here unless you can pull a rabbit out of the hat. And of course, you can't just pull a rabbit out of the hat if you've got a major client that are dropping, 7 figures on an annual basis into your coffers. I mean, you're not going to pull that out overnight. It's a long lead time with a big runway before you can actually land that one. So it's a difficult one to have filled. And I learned a very valuable lesson that I spread the risk completely across the board moving forward from there. And I never allowed, from that day on, any one client to be bigger than 10% of our total revenue within the company.
Very smart. Yeah. And you have, I guess, tens of, dozens of people, it looks like, between the different companies. Do you have different office spaces, or are you all in the same space, or do you go back and forth, or how do you? It seems like, they're overlapping skills from your standpoint, but also distinct clients and markets.
Mm. Yeah, so we have them in groups. Good question. So we work out of one building. We have an entire floor in central Melbourne, and we work in groups. So you have Premium Links that sits in one section of the office. Then you have WebOracle that sits in another section. Then you have AMP Brand and the creative sitting in another section. And then centrally, we have the office manager, digital marketing director, and the various other stakeholders within the business that are literally grouping everything together to make sure everything runs well. And that it really is the key, is making sure that everyone is talking to each other. We have whips on a regular basis. We never ever let anything slip through the cracks. One of the quickest things to do or to happen in a business is to land a great client that has great potential in terms of recurring revenue. And then, the left hand's not talking to the right hand, and you become irrelevant in their eyes for the reason is that you haven't picked up the brief properly, or it hasn't been explained very carefully internally. So communication is critical in what we do. So we have a communications person that literally sits in the middle of everything, and everything goes through a flow. So for us, one of the things that we always look at is channel before strategy. So we look at each client, we break them down in a whip, and we make sure that we sit each client in a silo of their own. And I don't know whether I'm getting ahead of myself, but where we use AI, we lean on that quite a bit. And I know a lot of companies don't, they use it for different things. And I've even heard people in our industry just complain about it. But I feel that there's a lot of downward force on people at the moment. You're either in or you're out. And I've seen businesses in the last 6 months here that historically, especially the creative ones, historically, that have literally gone to the wall because companies like ours and companies that are really focused on improving systems and understanding what their client needs are and just strategizing it a lot quicker and creating a system where everyone knows what's going on at any one time is critical. A lot of people use AI in different ways. And
So when you say go to the wall, that's an Australian expression. That means they're getting in trouble. They're
They're getting into
going to,
trouble. They're getting into
yeah,
trouble. So,
yeah.
if you've got an agency and you've got, someone that's historically been working in
Well,
an
yeah, give a few examples because I mean it's all in
yeah,
the news. Yeah, I mean whether it's a graphic designer or et cetera, AI boom boom, and
yeah,
you have something.
absolutely. I'll
But
give you
but
one.
but you can leverage it too, so that hopefully you can continue to grow and service your clients better.
Absolutely. So there's two trains of thought, right? If you're not picking up on it, an agency that recently went to the wall that's just down, well, not down the road, probably in the next large city in Geelong, and we hired half their people. They just didn't pick up on AI. They were still doing things, through spreadsheets, emails, and talking to each other. About 20 people, 20 to 30 in around there that they employed. And as we employed some of the people that they had, the talent that they had, which were fantastic at what they did, but they needed to be upskilled. Every time we asked them a question about AI, they had no idea about AI. They had no idea about how much it can improve your workflow and get things done a lot quicker. I mean, to not know that in this day and age, I think it can really work adversely and very much against you. And they literally went to the wall, or they got into trouble, and they're down. I mean, they
When we say
completely
that, they had financial problems. They had to lay people
they,
off. They may have gone out of
they did.
business. That's what we're
They did.
talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they had financial problems. They went out of business. Well, they didn't go out of business. They're the owner and his wife. So, from a business that's been around for, 50 years to do that
Yeah.
because they haven't picked up on, AI, where a lot of young people, even some of the young people that we're employing at the moment, the talent that's coming out of universities at the moment is unbelievable. And we're just picking them up everywhere because they're just like sponges. They absorb everything. And I feel that a lot of historical legacy businesses that are in our field are really dropping off because they're not picking up technology. Technology is your friend. You've got to lean into it. If you don't like, lean into it at least and try it. And if you don't like it, then don't buy it. If you've got a better way of doing something and you have, then do that. No one's stopping you, but at least have a look at it. I
Been
think it's
leaning in.
really
You've been leaning in since the beginning of the internet, really. So congrats to you for that. Finished. I kind of diverted day, week. You lose the big, huge client with over $1 million in revenue back then, where you may not have had as many people and as much revenue to start with. And did you have to lay some people off? You probably did.
Oh yeah, we had to lay off nearly 40% of
Yeah, horrible.
our staffing. That was probably one of the worst days of my life. I felt like I failed. And I came home to my wife and I just said, you know, this has got to be the worst day of your life. She said, no, no, it's not the worst day of your life. It's the best day of your life. And, I kind of thought about it and she put it into perspective. It was a great learning experience. It's a lesson that I learnt and I learnt from that. And the good thing about it is I got to re-employ quite a few of those people back
That is a good
as
thing.
a good story. It was a happy ending story. So I was really happy about that. But they understood. So that was a learning lesson. That was a business learning lesson. But business lessons are lessons that you need to look at very carefully and say, what are the moving parts that cause issues? Things like AI, you've got to lean into anything that comes up that you think you need to look at that could disrupt the environment. You need to look at it immediately. We have a
Is
company.
there a story or a sample of a particular, maybe you don't want to say it publicly, but a company and some things you've done from them to take it down to a more granular level of, hey, a
Sure.
company comes in the door and we did this boom, 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 and therefore their revenue was up or their retainage of customers was up or those kind of things.
Yeah, sure. So I'll give you one. The Hilton Hotel. I'm sure you guys know the Hilton Hotel Group.
Yeah,
The Hilton disappeared out of Melbourne. They used to have a great footprint here in Melbourne all the way up until I think it was around 1985, and then they moved out. They had one of the biggest hotels in the country at that point, and then decided to move out. But they had a really bad, stale look about them when, things were changing around in the 80s, were moving into the 90s, and it just looked like a hotel for businessmen that are jumping off planes all the time in wrinkled suits and leaving in the morning. And they basically shut that hotel down, and then they came back and they said, we're going to try this again, but we're going to do it a little bit differently. And I worked with a chap called Kenneth Chan, who represented the organization, and he came to me and said, look, we're opening up a hotel in the middle of Melbourne. It's going to be boutique. It's going to be this, that, and the other. And I got really excited because it was completely out of the box of what they normally do. And I've looked at the model. I've stayed at their hotels, and they've always been very cookie cutter. And this was completely out of the box. They wanted to attract locals. And we thought, okay, how are you going to do that? The only way you're going to be able to do that, we looked at a couple of offerings that they had. They had a restaurant, they had a great bar that was being put together, and we thought, this is your segue into getting people in through the door. And we built a campaign around, because they were in the financial and legal district of Melbourne, which is quite large, in Collins Street and just on William Street. So that's the legal section and the financial section.
Melbourne's still the biggest business city in Australia, right? Ahead of Sydney and the other.
Well, yeah, well, I think it's neck and neck.
Comparable, neck and neck. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah, neck and neck. But Melbourne's pretty influential. I mean, all the big four banks are here. You've got a lot of business here. Even BHP, one of the biggest mining companies in the world, sit here. So you've got all of those people sitting in the area. So we thought, you know what, we're going to come up with a concept, and we're going to talk to all the stockbrokers. We're going to talk to everyone that is, 9 to 5 in the area. And we're going to fill up the bar, which was called the Douglas Club, and what was it? Douglas Club and Lucci, which was the restaurant. This beautiful, sprawling Art Deco, high ceilings. They would have been at least 60 feet high in a beautiful location, and it was big. So we created a campaign. We understood the audience. We created a marketing campaign, a strategy around that. We picked all of our instruments so very carefully, like a song sheet, just created a song sheet and wrote a score for each channel, which was, your Meta, Google Ads, etc. And so we looked at it like that. So we wanted to make sure that everything was in tune before we hit the go button. And within 3 months, I'm not going to dive into the weeds, but within 3 months, we literally had that place. The bar was packed at 5 o'clock, literally every single night. From the bar, they'd go to the restaurant, and the next group would come through, and it was full, literally 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and even on Saturdays and Sundays. And I'll tell you how that sort of came about was because a lot of the people that were working in the area would tell their friends, well, this is the place to be. And if you're going to stay anywhere, you should stay upstairs because it's a big hotel. So what they not only got international travelers through their own marketing channels, but they also got locals staying there through the right marketing activity to come in and make it a little bit of an event of it. And then what we did, we decided what we should do is create a little bit of a story around the building, because the building had so much heritage and it was such a beautiful building that we created an app for it. And then anyone that walked in literally hit the QR code, and then it'd be taken through this back to history and taken through this wonderful story about the building. And a lot of the old bits and pieces were still remaining in the building that they can look at and go, oh, wow, that's been there for 200 years and this is what it used to do. So that really was an attraction point. So we created a point of difference so it looked completely different to any other hotel. I mean, Melbourne has, there's hundreds of hotels, but that place is humming due to that activity. But I'm really thankful that they actually acknowledged that, they stepped away from it. They gave us the power to be able to do it. We were really happy in that, Kenneth we'd worked with him before in another capacity, but in this capacity, he really said, look, take it over, come up with a strategy. He liked it. We pitched it to them and away we went. We just spoke a different language. And I think separation is critical in everything that you do as a brand, but preparation is, when people say luck, there's no such thing as luck. It's preparation meaning opportunity. I'm sure you've heard that before, and it goes a long way. And it's just rinse and repeat. And they've been doing that ever since. And, they've been a client of ours for, I don't know, over 10, 12 years, I'd say.
And you say recurring revenues, how exactly do you get that? That's for a client for 10 or 12 years, but that's probably not a contract. Maybe it's a contract. Talk a little bit about recurring revenue, because that gives your company a lot of solid financial stability in addition to, lots of big clients. So your people that work there know they're going to be in good shape, and on and on and on. Your customers know you're going to be there for many years to come.
Mm-hmm. So recurring revenue for us is a critical component. So if it's not reoccurring and someone comes to you and says, okay, well, hey, all I need is a really quick design and a couple of business cards, that's not reoccurring revenue. Reoccurring revenue is when someone comes to you and says, look, I really need help with my marketing on an ongoing basis, but I need you to come up with the narrative, the story, and I don't want them getting any fatigue. I don't want any new potential or existing clients getting fatigue. I want a rotating marketing campaign that comes up with something new and fresh every, month to 2 to 3 months. So it keeps them engaged and ongoing. And I want you to look after a bunch of assets for us as well. So our whole business model revolves around that component. We work with companies that have issues around that generally don't necessarily have a marketing department, or if they do, they have a very small one and they're always stretched for time. They don't ever have enough time in the day. Marketing people just won't call you if everything's running well. It's when things aren't running well is when they have problems. So they tend to pass things over in a capacity where it's a service level agreement, and that is our recurring revenue model. Now, sometimes in some cases, if it's a larger enterprise company, we might need to scale up. So we might lock them in for 2 or 3 year contract, and then that contract will come up after 2 to 3 years, and then we'd have to repitch for it again based on their brief and their requirements. So we work on a recurring revenue model, and as I said, 10% is no more than what we want to make from any one client in terms of income for that risk component, and that keeps everything very stable as possible, but also builds an attraction for your business. If you ever one day that you wanted to sell a business and move on and do something else, and a lot of people don't really have an exit strategy with businesses. They either pass them on or they just keep working them into the ground. Some, not all, but they don't know what to do them. So if you've got that exit strategy, that reoccurring revenue model is a critical component to being able to sell it very quickly. It's a very attractive business model.
Just an off story. So I was just making sure he was still CEO and president. But Krista said, we grew up in the same town in Arlington, Virginia, went to the same high school. So he's the CEO of Hilton worldwide. I still see him once in a while when I go back. His
nice.
siblings knew his siblings, parents knew his parents. Small world.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Hilton, pretty big enterprise.
We'd love to work with the ones in the US as well. Actually, we did. I think there's a head office in Texas as well. Their IT department sits there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you that about working in the US. These days, probably most things are, a hotel, you probably need to have someone go in and walk around and look at things, but a lot of things you don't necessarily have a man on the ground. So you can work companies in the US, companies anywhere, I suppose.
Oh, we do, and Premium Links. So Premium Links that I mentioned earlier is our offering. We have companies like KeyPath. We have various companies that come to us directly that are aggregators for universities. So we work with a bunch of universities in the US that require ongoing marketing for their services and for their offerings and their courses and their MBAs, etc. And Premium Links is the platform that most of them come to. So Premium Links is all about PR strategies and coming up with links in specific types of platforms or on specific types of platforms and journals that really connect with an audience to build authority and obviously give them some exposure throughout the spaces that they really want to be recognized in. So generally we have SEO experts, marketing experts that will come in. It's a transactional platform, but we've been working with a bunch of US universities, and even businesses now are coming on board because of the media connections we not only have in the US, we have them globally and a lot throughout Australia, from News Limited, who you guys I'm sure know, right through to Fairfax, ACM, a bunch of them. And on hand, we probably have about 250 odd journalists that support what we do, but they're also very industry specific because each type of business, especially if it's legal or if it's finance, requires a certain type of language because there's governance around the way you can write about a particular business in certain countries, especially in Australia and even in the US to some degree with certain things. I mean, you can't advertise legal services here as frequently or as easily as you can in the US. I mean, I remember driving through over to Palm Springs where my wife and I go on occasions and just seeing all these great legal boards, and thinking, wow, that's pretty cool because we can't do that in Australia. So that, just going back, I sort of got off track there a bit, but
Good story. Yeah, a lot of advertising for lawyers in this country. I think everybody pretty much knows that. You
yeah,
can't drive
that's
down,
great.
especially plaintiff's attorney, injury lawyers, a lot of signs, and on the
I
billboards for
know.
some reason. Yeah.
That is it. That was an eye opener for me for the first time when I would have been about 20 years old landing there. It's just all these signs everywhere, but legal in a way that I've never seen legal before. It was so compartmentalized that they specialized in each area. And I just thought, wow, that is impressive. So that is our platform, and that's the one that's getting us into the US. We're coming up with this new platform at the moment, talking about AI. We literally built a platform that we've been working on for the last 18 months, which is about to be launched towards the end of this month. And it basically goes through all your various touch points of your online platform and looks at every single moving part. We've put in over, I think it's close to 2,000 data points that it analyzes and compares you with other people within your industry, within your geoloc, and tells you where the issues are using AI. So we've programmed it in a way that it spits out the right data. So we're going through the testing phase at the moment for WebOracle. And that's something we're pretty proud of. It's taken a little while. So talking about leaning in, we just went right in there on that one. And I think that's where a lot of things are going at the moment. And you're going to see a lot more of it over the next 3 to 5 years. I mean, you look at Elysian, I know they do get a lot of backlash on, letting people go, but, AI drops a lot of that grunt work. I mean, let's face it, anyone that's using AI, the amount of grunt work that you don't now have to do is just remarkable in my view.
Change is always difficult, but they're actually in the US, there's articles now, at least in the Wall Street Journal, that there's actually more hiring going on than there
Yeah,
are layoffs from AI. So I think there's a lot of
absolutely.
opportunity for people and the young people too. They grow up with the phone, and so and everybody can, I mean, everybody should be using it regardless. But you were talking about the young people, they're catching on. So there's a lot of good opportunity. It's just, change can be hard if you're in the wrong spot at the wrong time, and always feel for those people.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of other people that are benefiting. And hopefully those people, they'll find their right seat as well if they get laid off from one spot. Like the people that didn't make it in the other company, well, a lot of them are working for you. So
Yeah, absolutely. So, but it's really interesting that you say that. AI is not really for everyone, right? So if you were to give, let's say Anthropic to a 15-year-old, would they know what to do with it?
that's a good question.
Probably
Probably not. Yeah.
no. And you know why?
I want to hear
It's
your
the
answer. I'm not sure I'm as far ahead
yeah.
on this as you are.
It's kind of rhetorical, really, because no life experience as yet, very minimal life experience and no business sort of structure and understanding of what it can do or, how things work out in the real world. So, I mean, you've got to come to it with a plan, right? And you've got to know what you're doing. And if you've got some business acumen, you can probably work your way around it. It doesn't come with a manual. Everyone does it in their own different way. And I've seen people do it in different ways. And the ones that can't use it generally don't have as much business experience, and they're usually a lot younger. And I'm not knocking anyone. I'm just saying that you've got to have a plan. So it kind of talks to a particular type of audience. And I feel the ones that don't get it now are starting to pick up on it and play around with it. I like the fact that, there's a freemium version of everything out there so you can play around with it, learn it and understand it, and then get into it.
It's still shocking too. I mean, I heard, and maybe this has changed in a few months, but a speaker on AI went to a seminar and he said they did a survey and only 1% of the people in the US were using AI. And
Wow.
they were using it. The definition of using it was searching using AI, which now you can do on Google at least twice a week, which I think most people would say is not really using AI. So
No.
uh, again, that's surveys probably, because I don't think Google had released that yet. Um,
Yeah.
but that was 2 or 3 months ago. But still I mean, the change that's coming is going to be profound and already is, but it's still a normal world in many parts of business, that it's not drastically changing that much. Um,
No, look, and 2 years ago, I was using Google like there was no tomorrow. I mean, you jump on Google and you do all your research there, right? And then you've got to wade through all of the information and collate it and do what you need to do. And I feel with, you know, Anthropic or Claude, if you like, and we use different ones for different things. There's not
sure,
one that, there's
right,
just
you
so
need to.
many. Yeah, we're using, I go into meetings now, and I'm not sure whether you've heard of a platform called Granola. And it's an app that sits on your phone, and you know what it does? It's great. It talks to everything. You just hit the go button or the play button or record button, so to speak. It records the entire conversation and takes all the notes, condenses them down into point form, into who said what. And then what I do is I load it straight up into my silo of that particular client in Claude, and it sits there as my history notes, and I know what's going on at any one time. So the way we operate a lot of our AI platforms is we create a silo, we create all the other AI platforms or attach all the other AI platforms into it, and everyone has an opportunity to jump in on that shared client silo, and we know what's going on at any one time. So if it's the marketing department, if it's the design department, if it's the management, the finance, whoever it is, they've got a record of everything. It's a great way of keeping records as well. But more importantly, you can also version control it and go back and see what's going on. So creating these silos creates efficiencies internally for us. And that's one big thing that we've overcome, because communication is a big thing in organizations. The minute you get past 30 or 40 people, it's an issue, or it can be an issue in some cases where not everything has been spoken about properly. But if it's sitting in this one silo, it certainly does.
Well, the things you're doing from the clients to listen to you, I mean, maybe some are more specific, but I mean, you're the whole breadth of marketing from brand and concept to, execution on a daily basis of the ads and all the different channels and SEO and graphic design. And I'm not even thinking of all of them because I'm not in your company, but there's more. And so, yeah, to keep track of all that with a big organization, you have to have good systems. That sounds like a great system.
Well, it's a great system. I mean, we've gone even as far as like, one of the big things that you always need everyone's looking for clients, right? Everyone is always looking for clients. You want the right clients. You want to work with the right clients. One of the most important things we've always found is, and this is another, school of hard knocks kind of stories where, when I started off in business, we just say yes to everyone, and
Yeah.
then it was so hard, Henry. We just got to a point where, yeah, we can do that. Of course we can do that. Of course we can do that. Then we found ourselves spinning our wheels working on work that's already there, but not bringing in additional clients. And that's a very easy trap to get into when clients are asking you for different things on a regular basis and not really itemizing what you're actually doing throughout the day. So understanding your swimming lane's been an important one for us, and picking who your right clients are is critical. It's the ones you say no to is the ones that actually give you the success at the end of the day, because the right one will come along. And for us, it's always been about the right client. It's got to be the right fit, because you really don't want to be fighting fighting the work internally and worrying about creep in work from the client. So defining and understanding what that right client looks like is an internal process as well, by creating a structure internally, understanding what you're providing that client, itemizing everything, but bringing them in as well. That's a big one. That sales component is critical. So we, again, talking back to my platform, sorry to do that to you and everyone else that's listening, but
We hear about it. It's exciting. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'm happy to talk about it then. We've created a system. It's an AI system that basically breaks down your entire platform from your brand component right through to every touch point that you're using. So if your brand is off point,
This is the one you spent 18 months working on and you're launching
yeah,
here at the end of this
we're
month.
just about to launch. Correct.
Yeah,
So
what's the
if you're
name? What's the name going to be? Or the name?
it's at web.au, weboracle.com.au. It hasn't been launched yet, but it
Yeah,
will be
right.
launched.
Sure.
Sorry?
No, I know it hasn't, but we'll get the name right so people can look it up. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And what it does, it allows you to, once you land on the site, it basically explains what it does. But we always start off, and no one's done it. And this is a first. No one's been doing this. We've created a first in terms of your brand assessment, literally online. And that is the most critical component. If you've got a website, and if it's not working for you, and if it's not making money or generating leads, what are you doing? Why is it there? Why are you spending money on it? Generally, it's the first port of call is the branding and understanding it. Now, if you can't understand, this is an easy fix for anyone, and it's not, you don't need to come to our website to know this, but if you can't understand or you can't get someone to look at your website and understand what it is you actually do within under 5 seconds, it's over. They're out. They're out so quickly. And if the branding doesn't relate and doesn't speak the language that they've connected with, that is an issue immediately. Everyone leaves straight away. So look at your homepage immediately, check it, and make sure that it literally stacks up really well. So the brand component is the most critical component, because that's the one that connects. It's like having a dish out in front of you. You go out to a restaurant, you're going to spend, let's say, a couple of $100 at a restaurant, whatever the case might be, and the dish appears and it's not quite right. I mean, it can smell okay, but it doesn't look that good. I mean, is it connecting right away? So first impressions are really important, but then you taste it and it tastes all good. So that's the critical component. Then what we've got plugins for, you can plug in your Google AdWords connectors from Google. You can plug in Meta, exactly anything that you have, and we can give you a projection read on exactly where your marketing is currently. And we're about 5% off at the moment, but we're looking at improving that to get it to about 98%. And then we can give you a projection as well of where you can be based around a whole heap of algorithms that we've created, and crawl other competitors to see where the gaps are and give you a full report on that. So that we're kind of backing what we do, as opposed to just providing you a report and walking away. It's all under the one roof. And what we found, a lot of enterprise businesses generally tend to like everything under the one roof, especially if you've got a marketing department that is talking to 5 or 6 providers. And Henry, I'm sure you've been in business for a very long time, and when you've got a lot of providers that you're dealing with, they're all blaming each other, especially if they're in the same field, if something's going wrong. And enterprise just don't have time for that, so they tend to go with a proven provider where they feel comfortable and they're getting results. So that's a critical component.
Well, let's have fun with it for a minute, and it's very critical. By the way, on that story, I started my first business. I was 26, a custom home builder, built a spec home, sold it, and realized no one was going to buy a custom home, kind of their dream home from a kid. So I managed to find a business partner that was 20 years older. But the first thing he told me is the best thing you can do is send the difficult clients to your competition. So like you were saying, find the right customer that's the fit for you. Because me, I was like, client, give me the client. Want to build a client, please, And no, we don't want that client. And so anyhow, a little different than an enterprise software company, but similar model, similar
Yeah.
thinking. So when you were a kid, obviously you mentioned tennis, I think, very high level and competitive. Your dad was in architecture, if I got that right.
You
Did you
did.
envision yourself even starting a new company after all the ones you've started at this time in your
No,
life? All these things you've
no.
done? Yeah.
No, I knew I was entrepreneurial and I kind of went against the grain in some capacity in a positive way, but I never knew I was the kind of kid that just came up with an idea and thought, okay, this is a good idea. But I always liked the idea of business. Business was always in the back of my mind, and I liked the idea of getting something off the ground and going through a process and making it happen. But did I know what? No, I just, you know, our municipality-based directory, the one down the East Coast, our publishing company, literally, that was an overnight thought. And the next day I wrote down the entire plan on how we're going to do it. I went out and got the stock, put it all together, and that's literally where it took off. I had one other idea back even earlier than that. I think I would have been about 18. This was around the university years. And I thought maybe doing cakes in a cup would be really good. So I came up with this idea and got a mixer and got a chef to make up a whole heap of different cakes that'd sit in a cup for a while. And then I'd go out and just visit a whole heap of people around where I went to school and the universities and stuff. So they'd all buy a box each and they'd fly off the shelf. But then I realized it was going to take a long time and the scaling component was probably a little more difficult than I anticipated because my pockets weren't deep enough and I was still a little green at that time in terms of just understanding how to get everyone together and scale this thing up to the top. So that was a hard thing to do. And I let that go pretty quickly because hospitality, as I'm sure you know, is a difficult business. And I just didn't have the pockets for it. But I learned a lesson from that. Okay, do something. I literally sold an entire book. And that literally led into my publishing. I sold an entire book without having to spend a cent before I went to print. So I learned that reoccurring revenue is a good thing. I learned that getting people to pay for things up front before you do them is a better thing and it's less risky. And so they're the types of lessons that I've learnt along the way that have really stuck with me. But I really like your one. Send your bad clients off to your competition. I'm stealing that.
Well, hey, I don't know if there's that's a pretty good wrap up, but if there's something else you'd like to add, I'm going to say from Thursday evening in Dallas, have a great Friday, since it's early morning, great Friday in Melbourne.
Yeah,
Is that where you
thank you
live? Do
very
you
much.
actually live in Melbourne or do you,
I do live in Melbourne. Yes, I'm Melbourne, Victoria. So yeah, I do live there. I'm literally not far from central Melbourne in Brighton.
nice, nice.
Yeah. But look, if anyone wants to connect with me, you can find me on LinkedIn under Michael Trkolta, which I'm sure you'll share on your feed at some point as well, Henry.
We will.
Henry, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me and hearing my story. It's been wonderful. I hope that your listeners got something out of it as well.
I know they are. I know they will.
Thank
Thanks a
you
lot.
very much.
Thanks for tuning in. Remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss another episode. You can also search Henry Harrison Podcast on your favorite podcast platforms.